What's up, y'all? My beautiful face is irrelevant to the fucking topic at hand. It's been a while since I just sat here and taught y'all something on the whiteboard. This is gonna be a part 2 to the simple progression model video that I made. I'm gonna flip up a clip on the screen, but it was a really simple progression model that people really liked. This is also something that I do in my training as well, so you could call it simple progression model part 2. I want to explain or preface this video just by saying something to you. It's a perennial truth. It's a giga-brain term for like, it's true for everybody. Methods are many, principles are few. I forget where I originally heard this from, but it's very true. There's a lot of different ways to do things, but the ways that you go about achieving just progression in your training, they're very few. This is going to answer one of those principles. When do I hit a PR? Okay, so this is going to take you through somewhat of a flexible progression. So I spaced it out in 5 weeks. You can definitely do that. I often like doing that myself. But if you feel good to add more sets, as you'll see, sooner than 5 weeks, you can definitely do that. So just to explain the simple progression method, number 2, I like lower reps with this. So this is more of a moderate rep range. 5 reps are what I like to use here, just because the whole purpose of this is to not miss any reps. So you have 4 total sets, 5 reps each. If you don't hit all 20 reps, you're fucking up. The reason why I favor moderate reps, even at the same level of exertion, is that higher reps are just generally more fatiguing in general. So they burn more calories. You're doing twice as much work if you're doing 10 reps as opposed to 5. And just off the strength of that alone, you're somewhat limited by your work capacity more than your muscular strength and your performance. Moderate reps are still gonna give us that good quality tonnage. 20 is pretty moderate. It's not nothing. It's not ultra high volume, but it's enough to get those big barbell movements, the volume that they need to help you grow. This will give you that even blend of bodybuilding and strength, 1 rep max performance. So use this in conjunction with other progression models to get the best of both worlds, if that's something that you're looking for. Me personally, I like strength and I like size, just not one or the other. So I'm never gonna pursue one in favor of the other one. Now, if you wanted to get as big as possible, you would favor one or the other, but this is gonna be for you guys that wanna have the best of both worlds. So that was the explanation behind the lower reps. You're doing a top set of 5 and you're gonna leave a rep or 2 in the tank. It's not particularly fucking important which one you pick. Just make sure that this isn't a 5 rep max, right? And then conceptually, you're gonna do 3 back down sets, subtracting at least 5% off that top set weight. You might have to experiment with that. You may need to subtract less, you may need to subtract more. This is why we say principles. The principle is you leave a rep or 2 in the tank, it's not a 5 rep max, and then you slash some weight off with the back downs. That's the principle behind it. This just speaks to the particular method that I'm going to teach you today. So minus 5% is needed. That's if you repeat this, say twice, and then you're 1 rep in reserve. It says repeat up to 3 more times till you have only a rep in reserve. Once you reach that, subtract 5% more, and then repeat until you get to 4 sets. That's week 1. Week 2, it's the same fucking thing, except for you're doing 2 sets of 5 at the top set weight that you did last week. And then you're following the same progression model for your back downs. You go all the way to week 4 or week 3. If you can get to 4 sets of 5 at your top set weight at week 3, you can definitely do that. That's why I said it's flexible. And you just do 4 sets of 5 at that week 1 weight. Then week 5, or whenever you reach this 4 sets of 5 or 3 sets of 5, you do a new 5 rep max at 0 reps in reserve. Now, if you can do close to your 5 rep max, because this is what this is if you leave a rep or 2 in reserve, if you do 5 reps with something you can do 7 with, it's gonna be pretty close to your 5 rep max anyway. If you can do 4 sets of 5 with that, that's a good indication that you can do more weight than when you started. That's the principle that we talked about. You have to earn your PR. And that's the answer to the question, when do I hit my PR? You have to set a trend or lay down a set of conditions in your training that allow you to create the adaptation that's going to create your PR. That might all sound giga-brain, but long story short, you need to put in the fucking work to get a PR and not just try to hit one because you want one. It's like feeling entitled to talk to a hot chick versus being a Chad and charming and you just talk to a hot chick or a dude if that's what you're into. You have to put in the work to get the results that you want. You have to put in the right kind of work too, and that's what that's all about. So very simple progression model. In terms of movements that I like to use with this progression model, self-limiting variations are my favorite. Reason being is that ideally you'd be using progression model number 1 for your main variation. Now, main variation and self-limiting variation is dependent upon just the universe that your training exists in. For me, that may be 2 sets of exercises. For a power lifter, that's going to be a power lift and one of these. For you, that may be something different depending upon what your main barbell exercises are. So for some people, that could be fucking, let's go full odd lift mode. Your main exercise will be fucking behind the back deadlift, and your shit, what's a self-limiting variation of that? It might be a trap bar deadlift or something like that, or whatever. Someone that lives in that odd lift universe can pick 2 lifts and put them there. But the main idea is you have main movement with the first simple progression model, and then your self-limiting or your main accessory with this model here. What I personally like, and what I'm going to tell you to use, is close grip bench or Larson press, pause squats, stiff leg deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts. They're both the same fucking thing. Weighted chin-ups or weighted pull-ups, whichever one you're weaker at. So everybody has one for the most part that they're stronger or weaker at. I happen to be one of those deviants where these are pretty much the same, demonstrably. Check on my channel if you don't believe me. Seated overhead press, non-back supported, is a really good variation to use. We could talk about that for a second. So with standing overhead press, and this is just the golden tidbit I'm giving you guys before we close off today. But with standing overhead press, as you start to fatigue, you start to use less shoulders and more upper chest, unless you keep things super strict, but nobody does that. With the seated overhead press, specifically a non-back supported one, your rep quality is forced to stay consistent, meaning you're forced to use your shoulders or you're gonna fall over. Or the bar path will feel awful and it'll force you to stay center line, you know, over your center of gravity, or the bar is just not gonna go anywhere. Finally, an extended range of motion seal row. So that's anything like a dumbbell seal row. I like using the trap bar. That lets you pull all the way to your chest. Anything that's going to be more range of motion than just like the regular barbell seal row where it's hitting off the bottom of the bench. And it's fine because it's a competition lift, but you're using that extended range of motion to be a self-limiting variation. These are the variations that if you're living in the bald Omni-Man universe, you're very likely to be using because you're more than likely doing one of these. And you're definitely doing seal rows because y'all tag them and you tag me in your videos all the time. So this answers those simple questions that we have. How can I accumulate volume easily? How can I build size and performance at the same time? And then how do I structure it in a way that I'm guaranteed to get a PR? That's going to be where we close things off today. Talking about training programs and guaranteeing PRs. I'm a master at what I do. I'm like a carpenter that has a magical toolbox with every fucking tool to solve the most obscure problem that he has to solve, right? All the same, if I write you a program, it's going to be crafted with that level of experience in mind. However, since it's a program that I'm writing to you, even if it has things that auto-calculate, I can't take into account like, okay, if you feel good, you could, you know, progress quicker like we talked about. Or if you're not feeling as good, you progress a little bit slower. Or if you get sick, or if your girlfriend dumps you, for blah, 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 where you don't have an ideal training session, or you have an above ideal training session. You have to know these principles so that you can use methods to accumulate fatigue, adaptation, and get the PR that you want. No program, for the most part, is going to be able to guarantee you anything if you don't understand where you need to pivot and change things at. That's why my channel is so focused on education. I want to show you how to do things so where if you need me to help guide you, no one that works with me has to work with me for very long. I pride myself in that. I'm not one of those coaches that keeps someone on my books just because I can. Now, there are people that choose to do that, but for the most part, people work with me for 3 months, 6 months, and I send them on their way because I'm big about teaching people shit. Don't feel entitled to your PRs. Figure out how to understand these principles so that you can apply them, and then get to work. This is going to help you guys out a lot. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace.